transition. All right, so we're here. We're live. Summer Derby. I think this is round. Is this the last round? This is round 8.
David's got one more, so
Oh.
he's 6-0 right now.
Okay.
Yep. This is basically his winning in.
Okay, so you can let them know that they can start.
All right, and go.
Unfortunately, I think John had to mulligan.
Correct. John Mulligan. David did not. I'm not sure who won the die roll, but
we'll
find out soon enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think like the big thing is always against, mulling against. I don't know if John knows David's on the deck, but he basically has to sort of mull into like an ancestral balance or something where you're going like lion Kurt ape into a dib.
Right.
Because just starting down that one card against the deck where like if they get to turn 4, you're just behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
Do they know to start? I see them looking.
Yeah, I messaged them. So I think John is deciding if this is his hand of 6. So like he's resolving his first mulligan. I haven't heard if he's keeping or not, and then I didn't see him put a card back yet.
Okay.
So it's nice to see the winners bracket since I'm not up there right now.
We got some comments on David's sleeves. Very those are actually custom sleeves that he made.
Oh, John is mulling a second time.
Oh my god. This is not a good way to start.
Luckily
I don't know. Is this 2 out of 3 or?
It should be.
Okay. I don't know if for derby matches you get to pick.
3 out of 5. You mean?
Yeah, I don't know if that's. I've actually never played in a derby, but I'm assuming it's 2 out of 3. Otherwise,
wait, are you not in the derby, Andy?
No, I didn't play. I actually never played, but maybe next time.
Yeah, I mean, so John's resolving a mull to 5 now at this point. I mean, with London mull, like we said, like now it's basically like, does he have a balance or an ancestral? Like that just totally corrects the whole thing. And a blind balance on the play basically just beats David.
Right.
So it's funny. David's mat is because David has the mat, the one where he has like literally every old card in Old School or like the cards he likes to play.
Right.
So this mat today is relatively tame.
Okay, I think we got something. It looks like he's putting stuff back here, so we might get some action. All right, let's see who's okay. Okay.
So it's so funny. I was in the Spike Fest.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, and I was against, or no, maybe it was the balance tournament, and I mulled to like 5, and so I had to ship 2 cards, and I actually shipped my strip mine to the bottom, and my opponent led with a library on the play, and I was like, oh shit.
That's like the worst.
Yeah, you're like, the one line that just decimates.
Okay, but we have something going on here. John's looking to. All right, not terrible, very good.
That was what we said. Like he needed the ancestral like balance line to really equalize this.
Don't know if it's equal yet, but let's see what he does. Okay, all right. So putting the pressure.
I mean, not counting the mull, like he basically did everything he could to set him up to win game 1 against the deck.
Right. I mean, especially with the library, you have to. I mean, if you. This is what is this EC rules or?
Yes. No, it's Atlantic.
Atlantic.
So there's one strip.
Okay. Right. So you definitely have to put some pressure on and just kind of force him to play his hand and get off those 7 cards as much as possible. So.
And I think that's the thing that like playing sort of like these lion dot dibs, whatever it is, like ends in a serendib. Mm-hmm. The ability for serendib to sort of break the library, if David doesn't find one of his Swords of Plowshares, like if he sits on the library for 2 or 3 turns. And John has any burn at all, he's so far behind to catch up because he's just not developing his board. Oh, Jesus.
Oh, okay, good. So we're looking. This is like the most amazing mulligan ever.
Yeah, he basically his mold of 5. I don't know what it was and whether the ancestral saved it, but um, yeah, this is
This
pretty
is
much the
great.
best he could hope
All
for.
right, so now he's free to play whatever he wants from his hand. Let's see what he's got. Tutor maybe? No. Okay.
And that's a Ruby and a Jet, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Which I think like what we're seeing from David is sort of the fallacy and the worry with Library of Alexandria, right? Like you can't mull a hand with Library in it at a 7 card hand, but sometimes that shit doesn't come together and you have no lands.
Exactly. Yeah.
And strip mine just leads to a blowout.
I have not seen any white on John's
Right.
board. Uh, and even if I played white now, John, I would be very hesitant to put
Oh,
a white color. Okay. Well now, okay. Well, we don't. We definitely know what Dave's playing. We can kind of guess
right.
at what John's playing.
No, David, no, pass the go. Oh, there he goes. Okay, during his upkeep. Good.
All right. Oh.
So here's a
Not
question
good.
for you, Andy. Are
Mm-hmm.
you more of a gentleman's flip with Chaos Orb, or do you make your opponent's flip?
I really don't care. I default to just flipping, but if somebody just wants the gentleman, I don't really care. But I guess my
Yeah.
default is just to flip, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like the flip mainly because like I find it to be fun.
Yeah.
But I'm also the weirdo that has like 4 or 5 Chaos Orbs in my Type 4 stack. So
Right. Yeah, I
the
don't.
the the idea of just throwing cards around, I think, is awesome.
You're like actually the first player that I've played against that had been like, oh, okay, it hits. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like I don't think anybody that I've played against actually has ever done that with me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny like when it's like super competitive. Like so, if we're sitting around like casually, and so like it's interesting. We just saw Rook Egg played, which I think is
So that's
not expected.
right.
Um, but I agree. Like when it's casual, I don't like flipping is fun. But like if I'm in an actual like tournament, I try to win. I don't want to win on the back of like you having poor dexterity, because like
Right.
certain guys like there's certain guys that have like medical conditions that preclude them from flipping an orb. And so I really want to.
I actually didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, like
That's
like do I want to beat those guys that have like an essential tremor or something like that because they just fail at flipping an orb? It's something I find fun, but like you know,
yeah, and
where's
yeah, I actually never thought about that, but now that you mention it, I guess I would. I mean, it's easier in person, right? You can't even see. Like
right?
in person, obviously you can see and be like, oh, okay, let's see what he tutored for. Okay,
Oh,
ancestral.
I mean, so it's funny, right? I can't tell how many cards John has in hand. Is the one thing like he's not keeping his hand on the table, so it's a little hard to keep track. But he probably has a, I would say like 3 or 4 cards.
Let's
So
see. Mulligan to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
and he's taken
And it's like probably
3.
like turn. Yeah, it's
This
difficult.
is
I would imagine about four cards, maybe
yeah.
4 or 5 cards that ballpark. So he did not. I don't think he played a land after his ancestral.
Uh, no, because the ancestral turn 1, right? Or did he not? I don't remember with the Underground Sea. I assume he probably has Chain Lightnings in his deck if he's running Rook Egg with a Dib deck.
Yeah.
So I think it's a reasonable assumption that he probably has close to 8 burn spells, maybe more. So the fact that he's got David down to 6.
Now Rook Egg is okay. Yeah. All right. So there's finally the white mana that he needs. It might be just too late at this point.
Yeah, I mean, again, because John's probably on like a Grixis shell, something red, blue, black. So I think it's reasonable to assume he's got
With
some
counter
complement of
magic?
burn.
Oh,
There you go, Mana Drain.
Yeah, I mean,
He has all the gas today.
I do not see any way out. Abyss, but I'm not sure if that's
Abyss
gonna
is
be at
actually
1.
terrible.
He's still gonna get an attack and he's gonna be at 1. with a bolt. Yeah, that's game.
Wait, doesn't he just sack the Rook Egg to the Abyss?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's true.
Like,
All right.
actually, like, Abyss is just unplayable in this matchup.
Okay, we expect that to come out. I guess. The only thing I saw was Dib. I mean, that would fall to Abyss, but
Right.
so I guess
Well,
we
he
can
can't-
speculate what John is playing. Grixis, I saw no white. Main deck Rock Eggs, Serendip Efreets, maybe some hippies. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
It looks
So-
like he's more on the aggressive side.
so Rook Egg's really interesting, right? Because, like, he'll need a sack outlet. I don't think he's on Neb's disc for this. So, and I mean, Diamond Valley's cool as hell, but it's probably not what you're doing when you're swinging with Serendibs and Lightning Bolts.
Right. Yeah.
So he probably has to have something like Chain Lightning.
I mean, unless you're
or-
playing like a Control Magic main deck, but
Yeah.
that's gonna even if he was, that's gonna change a lot. I feel versus Dave.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk of, like,
I mean,
David's
if you're
sideboard.
Dave right here, what would you put in? I mean, you talked Abyss is not that great.
Yeah, I mean, so his sideboard is really interesting because he does have Control Magic and he's got Maze, which I think both come in. The other thing he has is he has 3 Bebs. And I mean, with the Rook Egg, it's interesting, right? I think he has to assume there's a way to get the Rook Egg in the graveyard.
Right.
And I would have to make a leap that it's going to be through Chain Lightning or Falling Star or something like that.
Yeah, Falling Stars. Yeah, those are really the only things I could think of, unless you're.
Because I don't see him on a Nev's disc plan, but maybe he is. So maybe he brings in the Bebs. Control Magic is quite strong, as is Maze of Ith. And I think he has easy pulls for, like, Power Sinks in the Abyss.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, he really has to find 2 other spells to sort of. He probably saves a book, just because of the speed. You don't really want multiple books clogging up your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe plus minus he shaves a disenchant potentially. We saw no enchantments or artifacts there. He's not really worried about factory per se.
Not really, no.
So probably something like that. I don't think he's going to bring in the towers that you would in a ATOG matchup, just because there's nothing to think that, you know, John's playing pure fire.
Yeah, I didn't see. I'm wondering if he just plays a lot of discard and we didn't see it.
Right. Exactly. Like, there's too many things like unknown about John's deck. I mean, because I don't know how he leverages the Rook Egg, and that's where David is going to have to just take a shot in the dark, which will have huge repercussions for this game. And that's why I think, like, the Beb is sort of safe because you know it deals with the Rook Egg, you know it deals with Lightning Bolt,
Yeah.
and there's a high probability that Chain Lightning is in this deck, so it at least sort of, like, crosses all of those. I mean, the other card that we haven't talked about is Sedge Troll in here, which David has, like, ample ways to deal with it. But if he takes out the Abyss, Sedge Troll does become a huge problem.
Right, but how often do you see Serendips in, like, troll disco? I mean,
Never. I mean, yeah,
I've never seen
that's
it.
the
That's
thing.
what's throwing me off here. Like, if I didn't see that Dib, I'd say he's on troll disco or something.
Right. Yeah, it's weird because, like, with Dibs, you know that John's likely not playing City in a Bottle.
Right.
Which would be the other way. Like, you could run Rook Eggs and City in a Bottle and get great value. But I don't think he would do that. I mean, who knows? Like, right? Old School is this
We're
beautiful
probably
area
way
where
off.
where
John-
you can just brew crazy shit and you have immense success with it. You know, I'm 3-1 in the first round of the Derby, so I don't know if you could take anything I say as gospel.
Yeah, I don't. And, they're probably John is probably going to look at this and be like, "No, I was totally on a different deck."
Yep. And they'll be like, actually, guys, this is what I was
Actually-
playing. And we'll be like, Samsonite, I was way off.
I'm yeah. I was on an Underworld Dreams deck and I drew all my creatures.
Wouldn't that be funny if, like, he transfer, like, his sideboard was an Underworld Stream combo
if he
sideboard?
Badlands, Dark Rituals, Underworld Dreams right now, like, hats off to him. Like,
I think
okay,
David just has to scoop and say, "You win, sir.
good game.
Good game." Well, that's like Charlie is on. He's playing Underworld Dreams and he's sideboarding into the Dude plan.
Right.
And like, you know, it's funny. I think transformational sideboards are one of the coolest things in Magic, but they're also, like, probably one of the worst things you can do with yourself. But when they hit, it seems like you struck gold.
Right.
So I mean, I think at this point, David's on the play.
I actually like that mental game after game,
Yeah.
into game 3. Like, what are you gonna do? And I'm of the older, I guess the older school where we used to. I used to shuffle my. Well, I actually still do. I shuffle my sideboard into my deck
and pull the cards out.
Yeah. And that was, it was just because then you get that extra little percentage. You're like, oh, how many cards is he sideboarding?
Yep. Yeah, I'm not nearly sneaky enough. I remember it was last round at Eternal Weekend last year, and I went against Underworld Dreams actually. And game 1 I won. Game 2 he goes Dark Ritual, Jism Jin, and I had sided out all my Swords of Postures, and I was like, well, shit, I can't beat that. I have Savannah Lions.
Nice.
And then so game 3 I basically just split the difference and kept in like 2 Swords of Plowshares and like 3 Disenchants, and just was like, fuck it, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And luckily I had one of my Swords of Plowshares when he led with the Jism Jin.
All right, so I think nobody mulligans, so we're good. We're good to start. Island Go from Dave, and we're at Underground Sea, and I think he's in the tank here, as John says. He's probably got some action.
He's gonna play a Flying Man and just totally blow up all of our plans of what his deck was.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
He's picking which Dark Ritual to cast his Underworld Dreams right now. We'll see. All right.
Lotus again.
He's got some action.
Blood Moon. What the?
What? Okay.
So, it's funny. Like David's deck is sort of better against Blood Moon than a lot of other versions of the deck because he does run 3 basics.
Well, I mean, thank God he played the island, right? I mean.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess John has.
At least he has something now. I mean, ideally you want the planes, but let's see. Okay, 2 island. Now he has counter magic. Let's see what he can do. But
yeah, so I mean, basically Dave has essentially blanked. I don't know what's in Dave's hand, but he's blanked the Blood Moon, and so if he sided in the Bebs like we thought, or I thought, he's really in. He basically him to Turok him.
Right.
And John is not doing anything to put any pressure on. So, like, the best thing he can do with what we saw game 1 is to drop a Rook Egg, untap, spend a Chain Lightning, and spend 3 mana to basically turn his 4-drop into a 4/4 flyer and deal 3 to David, which is a fairly bad sequence.
Okay. So this is... See, I'm thinking about what was John thinking first turn. Like, what was his other option? Because his obviously the Blood Moon turns off all his lands, and he only had the blue one probably, so maybe he didn't have, there is a plateau there, so he does play white probably for balance, maybe, I don't know, but I'm wondering if he took time to think about his hand because it would shut off other cards. He probably shut off other cards that he had, so.
I mean, in general, I don't like Blood Moon in these decks, mainly because, like, Blood Moon is a very singular strategy where it's very good at getting greedy mana bases, but there's a reason why you want to run a greedy mana base, right? Like, I want all the restricted cards.
Right.
And setting yourself up to not be able to sort of play those restricted cards really waters down your deck for minimal upside. Like, it would have been one thing if he'd resolved a threat and then did a Blood Moon to serve as, like, a pseudo-Armageddon. But to lead with a Blood Moon without putting pressure on him, and he doesn't know David's deck, right? So he doesn't know that David runs 3 basics.
Right.
But I think it's a huge tactical disadvantage for him.
Now I'm really trying to figure out what he had in his hand.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, like, John is technically doing better than I am in the Derby, so I guess I shouldn't question what he's doing.
Yeah. Maybe he does. What did we see last? We saw Rook Egg, we saw Serendib, we saw direct damage, and
a Lightning Ball, some restricted cards. We've seen a Shatter now.
Any other creatures? Maybe he does. Maybe he does have Hippie. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I don't.
All right, so now we have the Pearl. I mean, David's really just totally gotten around. Now, I almost ask myself, I don't really want to disenchant the Blood Moon at this point.
Yeah, I actually would have sandbagged the Pearl, to be honest. Well, maybe not because he does have the Mox Jet, so he has a blue and black and
Yeah.
red. Um, I think probably John doesn't have hippies in the deck, mainly because if he's running bulks and plateaus, it's really hard to support Hypnotic Spectre.
Right.
Uh, and maybe Dave played. I mean, I wouldn't have played the Pearl after seeing Shatter, but maybe he's fearful of Mind Twist, taking him off white.
Yeah, I mean that's always a concern. He's all right. So 4. This is probably Rock Egg, I guess. No, Disc. Oh, so he does play Disc. Let's see what Dave does here. Yeah. Okay. He doesn't like that
Yeah.
clearly. I don't know if he's gonna power sync or.
Rabbit.
Yeah. So what would he lose? He's got 2 Moxes of Blood Moon. Dave has 1 Mox of Fellwar Stone.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I actually think the disc is more important for John to resolve. Likely, it feels like here, than it is than David carrying. Because once disc blows up the Blood Moon, like David has all the mana in the world.
Right. This is a little bit of an awkward corner we've put ourselves into here. Let's see what.
Well, it's actually turned into a really interesting game, right? Because John, it seems like, is disking out of a situation that he created.
Yeah. Awkward, but
yeah.
Let's see.
But also, maybe he's not running Chain Lightning then, and so he's probably on a more controlling, like Troll Disco, maybe plus minus trolls.
Yeah, we gotta say, like we don't know what he's playing. We can only venture to guess. And
yeah, I mean, typically, if
playing,
you see,
I mean, you can't say that Blood Moon is bad versus the deck. It's obviously a great card. So.
And maybe you might be able to answer this, Andy. Like I'm not at all well versed in Troll Disco, but how? Like I've always been under the impression like Hymn to Tarak is better in those lists than Control Magic or like Counterspell, but we saw a mana drain game 1, and clearly the mana base here is more designed to support blue.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on like Control Magic, Hymn to Tarak, base blue versus base black sort of Troll Disco? And I don't even know if John's on Troll Disco, right? Like, there's a motley assortment of cards here that I don't know what he's going to play next.
Right. I feel like that the black is a little better. I mean, I don't have a terrible amount of experience playing. I played it for a little while. I felt more comfortable with the black because it was just a little bit more proactive. But I've seen results from different players with both lists. So.
Yeah, I mean, because I kind of thought that like Disc and him play into each other because him forces your opponent to play their spells, so they don't lose them, and Disc washes them away.
Right. Yeah, that's true. All right, so we're gonna sit back and relax, everybody, because this is gonna be a longer game.
Yes.
So now we have an untapped Disc here. We have.
So what's interesting though is David has played Moxen into a Disc.
All right, no fear.
Right, like the Emerald was played after. I can't remember when the Ruby was played, but the Emerald was definitely played after Disc was put on the
Okay, there's the chain. You called it.
Okay.
Chains make sense with Rook Eggs. So if he's chaining while he's at 20, I gotta assume he's got like a lot of cards in his hand.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not really sure what John's doing, mainly because, like, tactically, giving the deck time is never the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Because are we just going to see a Brain Geyser here for, like, a ton?
That's the only thing, yeah. For that Fellwar Stone only produces red.
Yeah. Because, I mean, John probably has, 2 to 3 Rebs in his board, and if you brought them in, like, there's not a single target more juicy than this Brain Geyser.
Yeah, I mean, you have to counter this right now.
Yeah.
Oh, no, he doesn't have it. He just has a bunch of damage.
So maybe he's just going to try and do fire to the face.
Let's see. That would put him at 11. Next
Right.
turn.
And he's used 3 of 8 of the 1 mana burn spells. We have not seen anything that causes me to believe he has Psionic Blast. Like, at some point, once you do the math, like, he just can't have all these cards in his deck. I don't know where we are with that, but I don't think he has Psionic Blast.
If he double ball lightnings during his turn, I'll just the stream is over, guys. We're turning this off.
I will say this: if he double ball lightnings right now, I will basically.
This is awesome. That would.
I will say,
amazing.
Dave, I'm sorry, but you lost in the best way possible.
Okay. Wow, he's throwing the abyss. Okay, so.
Interesting.
There's a lot of value to this disc right now.
Well,
I mean,
it's actually like the abyss is kind of cool here, right? Because by David doing it proactively, like he does activate the rook egg, but the rook egg never gets to attack.
Right.
So David is helping to sort of set up where John has to blow the disc, and he's just baiting him, I think, at this point, right? Because he has a handful of 7 cards in hand. He discarded the Disrupting Scepter.
Yeah, I mean,
and
the rook would never attack unless he plays 2 creatures, and then
exactly,
and then he can set up the attack that way.
And so I think David's just sort of like getting him to blow the disc, and then we'll start from scratch.
I mean, I'm trying to figure out how many creatures John has in his. We haven't seen anything, and we're like
right.
Game. We're disking. It's happening, guys.
And was this the end of David's turn?
Yes, I believe so. Wait,
yeah, I mean,
yes.
I would have. I mean, I think there was a way where David keeps 1. I think he should have kept 2 mana up.
He had a Felwar Stone. Like you're saying, he should have used the Felwar Stone.
He could have. He could have kept up. Because like the thing is, as long as the disc was in play, and the Blood Moon was in play, John's mana was constrained in terms of color choice as much as David's was.
Right.
But what he could have done is he could have left open like 2 lands, tapped all of the artifact mana.
Yeah.
And likely had to tap his 2 basic islands. But if
this
John ever
is going to be a scary turn for Dave right here because he's at 9. I mean, we've seen a lot of burn come in, so.
And I think he got greedy, right? Like he kind of threw the abyss out there to get him to blow the disc, which is just fine. But he could have also sort of like only filled his hand up to 7, had multiple mana untapped, so that if John sacked the disc, and then he could be like, "Fuck it, I'm good."
Absolutely.
Because John.
All right, so recall. Or he's either that, or he's seen how much burn he's already used.
Because he might want to just do a draw 7.
Oh, John? Yeah. I think. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. It looks like he's got about 3 or 4 cards in his hand.
I mean, he could be a madman like me and put regrowth in everything.
Why not?
Why not?
All right. Well, he survived.
Right.
To fight another day. Let's see.
And I think John had, 5 cards in hand, it looked like?
Yeah, it looked like about 4-ish. Yeah. That's another thing. I gotta figure out how to get, like, a number of cards in hand counter or something. That would be great for this game.
Well, that's why, I usually like to lay my hands on the table, just so, my opponent... I mean, there's been so much... Well, not so much, but there's been a couple people that have cheated, so, I don't want to have any impropriety or the whiff of it.
Oh, yeah.
So I always try and leave my hand on the table just so, people can sort of track my cards. I'm not saying either of these guys are cheating.
No, absolutely. No, I hear you. But it's always, I've done some commentary for a bunch of these, and it's always I wonder how many cards they have in their hand. I don't know how to make that work, but...
Well, because David has a hand of 7, right? So, does he even regrow Ancestral here? Probably, but... Oh, no, Time Walk.
Time Walk, okay.
Interesting.
much with it. So now I don't
Yeah, I
know
mean,
if you've gone over the David's list before we started here. His win cons, I'm assuming, are the factories and maybe a fireball, or
I,
does it
I
have
actually
anything
think he
bigger like
cut the
Sarah's or something?
fireball. No, I think he's pretty much just on like
Just
factories
the
and a
factory.
mirror.
Oh,
And just
mirror
mirror.
factory, mirror fire. No
Yeah.
fireball, you said?
No fireball.
Okay.
Yeah, he really streamlined his list. I mean, maybe he brought in control magics.
Okay.
Um, I don't think he bring. I think if he did bring him in for game 2, he sides him out, seeing discs.
Yeah.
And also seeing white. Like, I'm actually surprised John's playing Shatter. And maybe it's because of the Blood Moon, but I feel like if you have plateaus and tundras, like Disenchant's just better.
At this point, I'm wondering if John even sideboarded out his creatures, minus the factories, because I haven't seen anything, and maybe he saw the abyss. He sideboards out his creatures, puts in burn, shatters, blood moons, and effectively, I mean, you can't take out your swords, right? If you're Dave, so that's like dead cards. Maybe that's what he did. I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I can't argue with John's results. Like, he's doing well in this event, so like clearly something's working. But I've sort of like, I know traditional wisdom is sort of like, I'll take out all my guys. You still have to respect the guys. Yeah. But I've sort of like switched to overloading them with dudes and burn. So like, fuck it, you can keep both in. I don't care.
Right, you got to do one or the other. Oh, okay.
Right. See, this is really weird because he's behind on board.
So what is it? Oh, he activated.
I guess he's taking it back and saying.
Does that work?
I think it becomes a 2/2 mount.
It becomes a. Let me get Oracle text here, but I think.
I think as long as he did it before he cast the Blood Moon or in response to the Blood, like if he held priority. So like it was a little like I'm not hearing the language, but I think as long as he announced Blood Moon and then holding priority with Blood Moon on the stack, he made the factory a dude. It still should be a creature. So becomes a basic mountain, but it's a 2/2 basic mountain, non-basic mountain.
It becomes a 2/2 summon worker, and it's still a land.
But the notion that Dave doesn't have an answer in a hand of 7 with 2 Cities of Brass is kind of odd to me. Like whether it be
I think they're
Disenchant.
asking the same question. It looks like he's doing something on his keyboard. Maybe he's.
Yeah, maybe they're looking it up under Gatherer. My intuition is it's both a creature and a dude, and the Blood Moon won't strip away the creature.
Yeah,
it just will never be able to be a creature again.
Maybe that's what they're looking at.
And it can't pump itself once the Blood Moon resolves. At least that's my. Now I know that the language around Blood Moon has changed a lot, like where it is in the layers, and I will be honest, I have not kept up with that.
We're not going to go into that.
I mean, I used to use the Blood Moon a lot when I was playing Painter and Legacy, but I know that the layering of the card has changed since I was like a competitive Legacy player.
Right.
And I'm not sure what the ruling is on that. But I do find it hard to believe that Dave doesn't have a response to prevent this factory from attacking in a hand of 7. That or he just drew complete blanks off his Brain Geyser.
Right. I'm looking at the Gatherer.
Yeah, I think they're still trying to reason what it is.
Yeah, okay. So it says here, it gains the creature type Assembly Worker, and then when it becomes a creature, this means that it ends up being 3 types: a land, an artifact, and a creature.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I think you're right. It's a mountain that's also a 2/2 Assembly Worker until end of turn.
And it's an artifact, too. You know, it's a non-basic mountain that is an artifact and a creature that can die to Lightning Bolt, die to Shatter, and everything in between.
So he played the Blood Moon.
Yeah, I mean, I think he kind of did it. laxed.
held priority, and waited to see if it was going to be countered, and then responded to it by activating his mistress.
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably was an actual misplay. When was the last time you saw an old school player say, "I'm going to cast this and hold priority"?
Not with
Crack
the blood
this
moon.
and yeah, like it doesn't.
I mean,
like nobody announces a spell and says holding priority. Wait,
you
I'm going to crack my LED.
Usually after hold priority, the forks in hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever, we'll get through this, guys. Don't worry. Okay, I think we've gotten through this. Blood moon. There's the Mishra. He's gonna be attacked. I'd be surprised if he doesn't attack for 2.
Yeah, I mean, I assume he's. I mean, maybe he has double bolts, and that's his line. Like, get him down to 6, and then what is David doing? Tapped 1. I assume it's going to be a Beb or a Swords of Plowshares. Yep.
Okay. We're gonna have to ask them about that, the sequencing on that play.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what it was. Like, I think
curious,
it was like, we're casual and old school, and
just curious. All right,
Wait, and so what did he? Oh, he blew a mental blast the moon.
The moon, afterwards, I guess. I mean, is it much of a big deal? Is it like
he had to do it while it was on the stack, right? Or like tap the blue.
I just added to his mana pool, yeah.
Yeah.
Because at that point, if you can't, you just actually.
I mean, really,
this goes back to the layer and how Blood Moon interacts with Mishras, but can't you just activate your Mishras and then Blood Moon? But then it loses its creature type, I guess.
I'm confused. Like, if he had the Bev, I don't know why he didn't just maze the factory. Right? Because the maze was untapped. Why blow your Source of Plowshares on the factory when you could just maze the fucker?
That's a good point. All right.
I mean, maybe he just wanted to remove a threat and just he has enough. I mean, Dave could be holding 3 other Source of Plowshares, and he's like, I remove this threat, and I have a factory. My win is in hand.
Yeah. Also, I think somebody in the chat said he discarded his swords. I don't know.
Oh, really?
I missed that. I don't know if that's true, but maybe he has more. Maybe he has.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is Dave does have his mana is not the greatest because he's sitting on 2 Cities of Brass, right, and a Maze of Ith. So, like, at some point, he's gonna stop being able to use 2 of his mana sources.
Right.
Or at least be in danger of it. Because John does have a handful of cards, and I think he has to respect the burn. So I wouldn't be surprised if Dave basically doesn't tap his Cities of Brass for the rest of the game.
I wonder if John decided in sitting a bottle after taking out his dibs, clearly, because I haven't seen any. Because, I mean...
It's interesting, right? Because
I gotta say, his body language is very comfortable. So I don't know. I've never played. I think I've played John in person, but I've never played him on webcam. He looks very comfortable right now. It doesn't look concerned.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that I don't like about webcam games is I'm a big body language reader, and I lose that. I lose that edge.
At the poker table, huh?
At the poker table.
Intimidation.
Yeah, not so much of that. Those little tells. But
yeah, I mean, I get that. I mean, I imagine that was. Didn't you go like 4 or 5-0 at one point in Eternal Weekend with Thicket Basilisk?
Oh,
False Order, and that was just pure intimidation, right? Just running steamrolling people.
I think people were just shocked and awe. It was a shock and awe campaign, and.
I mean, by far, it was the most impressive of all the sisters, I think.
Adam kept on asking me what's going on. I was like, I don't know. All right, let's see what's going on here. So we got 3 mana. Okay, recall. Let's see. Looks like he has about 3 or 4 cards in his hand. Let's see if this resolves. It is resolving. And he's getting.
What? I don't understand. So I really need to figure out why Blood Moon matters here. Like, I just don't get it. I guess, is he trying to turn off library?
Turns off library, gets rid of Mishra.
I mean, but you know David has Bebs. You know he has, I think, at least one recall in his deck, right? I don't understand the fighting over the Blood Moon, and I guess John's sort of like, I'm going to Blood Moon you.
Well, David thinks it's important. He's fighting for it.
Well, also, don't forget, David has 7 cards in hand, right?
Okay.
So he's got to just, he's got to just burn through cards in general. And he's going to outdraw John 3-1 at this point. So it's really just a question of, can I set up something before I run out of counter magic?
Right. I mean,
and maybe that's what John's thinking.
If he only relies on the Mishras, then I mean that's the win con, right? I guess. I mean, you could say that Dave can just bide his time and then disenchant 10 or 15 turns later, but.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we don't know Dave's hand, right? So, like, if he has, like, a counterspell or two or, like, a counterspell in the bed, he might just be sitting on, I'm just going to draw cards and mirror win.
Right.
And not care. So there's a lot of unknowns. Like, if he throws a disc down here, like, what does that even do?
It gives him a 4/4 flyer, apparently, right now.
Like Rorkega is just so bad right now.
Right now, with the
really, like, and see, like, I don't know. Personally, I would have waited to throw the STP at that, mainly because you have a Maze of It.
Okay. You have answers.
And there's no reason, right? Like, it's not a threat because it's an 0-3, so you have to get him to at least spend a card.
I mean, maybe he just has to get rid of cards he doesn't want to discard.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
All right, let's.
Were you watching David's game when he played Jeff White? Was it last night or the night before?
No, I couldn't. I heard it was a good game, and I heard his line. Well, when you guys were talking, I heard his line of play was very.
Yeah,
very
I mean,
tight,
like
very tight.
Very, very tight. I actually like thought more about it afterwards. I was messaging him this morning. I was like, actually, like, that sequencing was so incredibly like complex and like smart, because he just towed that fine line between like ending the game and actually there's the Hymn to Torox from the board.
That's great. That's a great card.
Yeah, that he basically just took away every avenue for Jeff to win.
See, I mean, he's reaching for red mana now, so I mean, he's got to have bolts in his hand. He wants to get the damage in. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually like I want to know why David brought in Hymn to Turok also. Like, I don't think I would have done that in this matchup.
Oh, because he gets rid of his direct damage before it resolves anyway?
I guess.
Is that what you're saying? Like, that's not.
I don't know why David would have brought in Hymn to Turok in this matchup. Like, its utility doesn't seem great.
They're gonna watch this video and they'll be like, "You guys were bad mouthing us the entire."
Oh no, it's more just like uncertain. Oh, game over.
Touche.
Wait a sec. Why would he bring in Psychic Purge?
Well, clearly because he wants to do 5 points of damage.
Oh my God, David just lost. I mean, I have no idea what this guy was playing. Holy fuck.
Wow. 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 Great.
Wow.
I guess he one-upped him.
So, here's the question, like, did John just bring in Psychic Purge thinking that the game would go long? I'm going to sandbag this. You're going to try and mind twist me.
Let's see. I mean, they're laying out what they sidewarded, I guess. Hopefully they do. Can you text them? I mean, message them. Tell them to lay it out. That'd be great. That'd be awesome to see.
Yeah, let me ask. David.
Because I wouldn't have put... That's great. I mean, that is insane. Maybe he did take out his creatures. I don't... So he
So I
had
have
to,
to.
he had to. Not only did he have to know that David was going to put in hymns, but then he had to be
Yeah,
like,
unless so Chef will bring in Psychic Purge against the deck all the time.
yeah,
Mainly because he's just fearful that they're just going to try and mind twist you at any given juncture.
or or
And
Twister or something, But
it's funny though that John
Wheeler.
basically boarded in a manner that totally counteracted David's sideboard, which I wouldn't even have like.
That was awesome.
I mean, it's a non-traditional sideboard that David has, and then his board plan was not what I would have expected.
Yeah.
Like, I would never have been able to have John's line of play because against David's deck, I would have never assumed he would have brought in him to Turok and Disrupting Scepter against me.
That was great. Great job.
Yeah, it was really weird. A lot of fun to watch.
All right, guys. So we're gonna end the stream here.
Well, we sound. I know. I personally sound like an idiot because I did not see any of that coming.
That's why he's doing so well.
Obviously we both have something to learn from him.
Exactly.
That's the moral of that story.
All right, great games.
Great games.
Thanks, Seth, for helping. Be
thanks, Andy. Take care and stay safe, buddy.
Hope everybody enjoyed it.